Christmas Day started gentle and bright, the kind of cold that makes the air feel clean. My parents were up early, and my sister had already staked her spot near the tree. The living room smelled like cinnamon and pine, and the heater grumbled softly under the floor. I made coffee and watched the patio light blink against a thin layer of new snow. We opened stockings around 8:15 a.m., laughed about little things, and let the day find its pace. Some years are loud. This one felt calm and small, which I liked. Around 10:02 a.m., my mom said the roast would go in at noon, which gave us time for a walk. My dad slid the storm door open and said the wind felt light, so I grabbed a hat and stepped outside with my sister. The snow made a gentle squeak under our boots, and the neighborhood wore its usual strings of white lights and red bows. We passed 3 houses with inflatable snowmen that seemed to lean in toward the road. By the time we circled back, the sun had that gray edge it gets in winter when clouds drift in from nowhere. A package sat on our porch that hadn't been there when we left. It was wrapped in red paper with white trees and tied with a gold ribbon that looked too neat. No label, no sender, just a small card tucked under the bow that read "For you" in block letters. My dad frowned because anything without a label on Christmas feels like a dare. He picked it up, felt the weight, and set it just inside the door with a small grunt that suggested caution. We laughed it off, said our secret Santa missed our text, and moved back to the tree. At 11:31 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text from my mom's number telling me to put the red gift near the mantel. She was in the kitchen, humming to herself and checking the oven temperature. I looked at her, then at the message, then at her again. She had flour on her sleeve and didn't have her phone in her hand. I asked if she had sent it, and she held up both palms like I had asked a strange question. I shrugged and set the package near the mantel because the instruction had crawled under my skin. A minute later, another text arrived from my mom's number saying, "It looks perfect." The punctuation fell off. She never writes in lowercase. I said nothing because the roast had decided to need attention, and she was busy. My sister joked about vibes, and my dad rolled his eyes in a way that said, "Keep it light, please." The heat kicked on again and made a small noise like a long sigh. The tree lights hummed in their quiet way that you only notice when everything else stops. I went to the hallway and took a photo of the mantel to send to my cousin because the card from the mystery box had bothered me more than I wanted to admit. When I zoomed in, the reflection on the glass of our framed picture showed the patio door behind me. The reflection showed the door in a small, pale shape beyond the glass, like the edge of someone's coat. I turned around too fast and almost dropped the phone. The patio showed only our deck chairs with a dusting of snow and the yard where the gate leans under December weight. The motion sensor clicked on and then off with no one to blame. At 11:58 a.m., my dad said we should open the weird gift before we ate so it didn't sit in the room like a secret. He cut the ribbon, peeled the paper, and lifted a plain cardboard lid. Inside lay a small wooden box with a sliding top and a black velvet lining. I felt my stomach tighten because the box looked like something you'd find in a drawer, not on a porch. A smooth plastic disc sat in the velvet, the kind you press into a keychain to track your luggage, the kind you hide on a car. My sister backed away without thinking. My mom's face changed in a way that made her look older in a second. I said it might be a prank, which was ridiculous even as I said it. My dad slid the wooden box into a plastic bag and tied it twice like crime scenes taught him something. My phone buzzed again. "Looks great near the mantel, perfect line of sight." This time the sender field didn't say my mom. It showed a lowercase name I didn't recognize. The roast was fine. The house wasn't. I texted the non-emergency number because I wanted help without sirens on our quiet street. I wrote the time, the gift, the texts, and the wooden box, then turned off my phone's Bluetooth like it was a charm. We checked the cars. My dad found a small, white disc pressed into the rubber of the rear tire on his SUV. Not taped, but wedged into a pocket near the sidewall. It carried scuff marks like it had been installed with a flathead and patience. He pried it out with a butter knife and dropped it into a cereal bowl like it might be hot. The bowl looked ridiculous, but it kept us moving. The gate to the yard stood open by an inch. Not wide, not shut. The officer arrived around 12:27 p.m., a friendly face we'd seen at the summer fair. He examined the wooden box and the disc, then asked about our patio camera. We don't have a patio camera. He said the text would be handled by the cyber unit, which sounded like a large word trying to be calm. He walked our yard, followed powder impressions along the fence, and checked the alley behind the property. A set of prints came up to the gate, paused, then stepped to our porch, and stood in a way anyone could see from the street. They didn't go to the windows. They didn't wander. They were neat and deep with a narrow heel and flared toe. They looked like some prints I would later recognize again in another winter month. We ate at 1:11 p.m. because hunger is practical even when your chest feels tight. The roast tasted like tradition, and the room tried to warm again. We laughed a little because our family tries to be normal when scares show up. My mom asked my dad to put the wooden box with the disc in the basement until the police could collect it. He carried it in the plastic bag like it might whisper. At 3:03 p.m., my phone buzzed with a new text. I like the white lights on your mantle when the room goes dim. The officer had told us to ignore new messages and save them. I saved it, then stood in the hallway and watched the light through the tree's needles move like tiny green arrows. The patio sensor turned on once more with a stubborn little click. Nothing moved on the deck. The house felt small around the window frames. The heater breathed and then paused. We changed small habits that day in the way families do after a scare. We kept the gate latched with a chain that felt old-fashioned and ordinary. We turned off random sharing features on our phones that had always been on because no one asked us about them. We bought a small motion camera for the patio and installed it even though we didn't want to be that house. We started opening packages on the porch if they had no label. That part lasted a week. The rest stayed. I wish that gift had not appeared on our porch. I wish I had not said prank when we all knew better. I watched our white lights that night and saw the reflection of the glass show the dark sky and an honest tree and my face looking older by a year. Honesty costs less than fear when you pay attention. We chose boring safety over nice surprises. It felt like a good gift to give back to ourselves. I grew up loving Christmas carols because the melodies feel like a soft map for where your feet should go. On Christmas Day, our church held a late afternoon service for people who were cooking all morning. The parking lot showed slush lines and clean glass where wipers had done their work. The nave smelled like candles and cedar, and the choir wore deep green robes that made the gold ornaments look warmer. I sat near the back at 4:06 p.m. because I like to watch people as they arrive, and I like leaving without weaving through a crowd. I turned my phone to vibrate and slipped it into my coat. The light through the stained glass did that winter thing where colors deepen and shadows stretch. Once in Royal David's City started, and the choir sounded like they had slept well. My shoulder dropped for the first time that day. During the second hymn, my phone buzzed with a message from Music Office telling me that my car's lights were on and someone was checking them. I glanced at the usher near the doors. He didn't have a radio, and I didn't recognize the number. I ignored it and sang the last verse softly because my voice is shy. The text came again with a photo thumbnail of the lot. I tapped it, expecting the familiar angle from the church's small camera, and saw a crooked image taken from ground level that showed 3 sets of boots and the corner of a red coupe that wasn't mine. I slid the phone into my coat again and pretended I felt nothing unusual. The sermon started at 4:23 p.m., short and kind, the way Christmas sermons often are. During the prayers, I felt a breath near my ear. It was nothing you could photograph. Someone leaned behind me like they were picking something up. I turned slightly and saw a man in a charcoal coat writing on a program with a pencil, the old-fashioned kind that makes a small scratching sound. He didn't look up. He smelled faintly like peppermint and campfire, a mix that felt wrong in a place that usually holds only candle wax and clean clothing. I breathed through it because people are allowed to exist near you in public. After communion, the ushers open the side doors to move people out toward the lot in a way that forms less bottleneck than love. I waited in my corner until the aisle cleared and then walked to the front to say hello to the choir director. On the way, my phone buzzed with a thank you for the hymn from a number labeled Carol. It had a small treble clef emoji I would never use myself. The director smiled and said Merry Christmas, which made me feel normal for a full minute. We talked about weather. We said small kindnesses. I stepped into the vestibule and the cold that came through the door like a polite guest. The lot looked soft and gray under a new dusting of snow. My car sat near the far lamp. The lamp flickered once and steadied. A person stood in front of my bumper with hands in pockets, facing sidewise like they were calculating a puzzle. I walked carefully with my keys in my palm and my breath low. The person turned halfway and said, "Your light's like news." A cheerful voice, a measured face. He wore a white scarf and a beanie with a small leather patch. I clicked the unlock and thanked him. He said nothing else and tried a smile that didn't bend his eyes. I sat in the driver's seat and closed the door while the heater remembered its job. I watched him in the mirror. He turned and walked toward the alley that runs behind the rectory, where the snow stays thin and footsteps ring like small glass. Two more people stepped out of the shadow near the trash bins, which made my shoulders tighten again. They looked at each other. One lifted a hand and put it down. A long line of tire tracks led toward the alley mouth where the plows hadn't reached. I drove forward slowly, then turned toward the main exit, not the alley, because I like my math with a higher numerator. The man in the scarf glanced quickly and then pretended to be on his phone. As I passed under the lamp, my phone buzzed with left turn, gift table pickup, and I breathed out a small, honest laugh because someone had decided to make their lie too fancy. I left the lot by the road that connects to the main street, where shops sit with windows like warm squares. A patrol car moved along that street at a speed that suggests watching and waiting. I parked 2 blocks away and walked into the bakery because they know me and because I wanted witnesses without making a scene. While I waited in line, I watched the lot through the window. The 2 shadows from the alley moved to the far side and stood by the small door that employees use to bring in seasonal things. The man in the scarf held a program and wrote with a pencil, then looked up at the lamp, then at the door, like he was deciding. My fingers stopped feeling cold when the clerk said my name and handed me a bag with hot bread. I haven't eaten bread in church clothes often. I recommend it. I drove home the long way. Later that evening, I found a small sticker on my rear bumper near the license plate light, reflective and meant to catch headlights. It wasn't ours. It peeled with a sound like first tape. Under it, the paint had a bright new line, almost like someone had wanted a short anchor for something that wasn't tape. I wiped it, turned off my phone's random sharing, and wrote the time in my notebook because writing makes things real and less sharp. I wish I had stood and called out in the lot. I wish I had asked the usher to walk with me. I know better and did the small things that helped anyway. On Christmas night, I played a carol on my phone in our kitchen because sound feels like light. I didn't use the emoji. I just let it be a song. I took a seasonal courier job because tuition does not care about my feelings, and Christmas tips help more than you'd think. My route ran the edge of town where houses sit with deep yards and mailboxes that lean a little. Christmas Day had a short shift for us, mostly last-minute parcels and one need signature box that made everyone roll their eyes. I checked my manifest at 2:12 p.m. and saw the box for a farmhouse west of the reservoir, close to the road that loses its lines when the wind drifts powder across it like someone erasing. The farmhouse looked like a picture from a weekend magazine. White trim, wreath on the door, and a porch with 2 chairs facing the fields. I knocked, waited, knocked again, then checked a note on the manifest that said, "Family out. Leave at barn drop." The barn sat down the rise with the big doors and a single red lamp that glowed like it remembered a language I did not speak. I texted dispatch a quick question because the barn drop line felt like something people add when they want to be casual with things that require signatures. The reply came from a different number than usual, a short, approved, and my stomach didn't enjoy that vote. I walked the slope carefully because the crust over powder breaks your pace in a way that makes your ankles think they're chewing. The barn smelled like hay and diesel and old wood. The drop box sat near the side door, a plastic bin with a lid that had 2 small holes drilled on either side like someone had practiced. I lifted the lid and saw nothing inside except a folded note with "Thanks" written in felt tip and a sticker shaped like a snowflake. Cute, dangerous, annoying. I set the box in and took a photo for proof because photos settle arguments at 5 p.m. The red lamp flickered, then steadied, then went dim. I looked up at it, then at the big doors, then at the path back to my van. A blue pickup rolled slowly along the road and then stopped where the ditch turns. It idled. The light stayed off. The idling changed pitch once and then settled into a lower hum. My breath fogged too fast because my brain was working on more than oxygen. I walked back up the path and felt the wind carry small ice into my scarf. At 2:28 p.m., my phone buzzed with a signature received message for the box I had just left. The signature line displayed a scribble and a name I didn't recognize. No one had signed with me in person. I took a second photo of the drop-in and the barn wall with the lamp to layer the truth. A person stepped out from behind the big door and waved, the kind of wave people use when they don't want to shout. He wore a brown jacket and a beanie and a smile that came too quickly. I raised my hand in a half wave and said I'd set the box in a bin. He nodded and leaned on the door like his weight had nowhere else to go. I reached the van, got in, and let the heater face me like a friend. The pickup started moving again, turned around in an 8-point ballet, and headed back the way it came. I watched it in the mirror until it disappeared behind the line of trees where the wind always cuts right. The person near the barn walked to the drop box and lifted the lid with both hands like it might shock him. He took the box out, looked inside, then looked at the slope where my footprints melted into the road track. He put the box back and closed the lid. He didn't wave again. He stood there with the red lamp, painting his coat. I drove away slowly, then faster, then pulled into the turnout near the reservoir to collect myself because my fingers weren't doing what I asked. My phone buzzed with a new route change, sending me to a holiday kiosk halfway across the map. The name looked like a marketing idea, not our route sheet. I declined the change and called dispatch. The familiar voice picked up on the second ring and asked to repeat the route change name. I did, and she said we didn't have any kiosk job today, and the number I saw was not one of theirs. On the way back into town, I checked my rear wheel for the small white disc that now lives in my head more than the steel does. Nothing sat in the rubber, and the lip near the hub felt clean under my glove. The wind made the road hum, and my van settle into a groove like a song that used to sound nice. I parked behind a store and brought in the last manifest page to fill the lines for things people glance at later. I wrote the time, the barn, the pickup, the signature message, and the route change, then turned off the auto join that had always been on because I never asked it not to be. That night, I ate leftovers with my sisters and watched the snow try to decide if it would keep falling. Around 9:07 p.m., my phone buzzed with thanks for the holiday help from a number that doesn't belong to any customer on my route. We saved the text and muted the number. My dad asked if the tips were good, and I said yes because they were, and because talking about money felt easier than talking about barns that smell like old lies. We took a small walk to the end of our street and back, keeping to the middle because plows make edges tricky. I know this isn't the worst story anyone has told about a job on Christmas Day. It felt like a small test of how you choose your lines and your lights and your speed in places that look familiar until they aren't. I prefer boring routes now and signatures that feel like real names. I keep the heater pointed at my hands because warm hands write better and decide better. I walk a few steps slower when a red lamp flickers. That is my math that night gave me. It isn't festive, but it is honest, and I think that fits the season just fine.